snakes.
Actually, Lorraine, that's incorrect. While Valac is associated with snakes, he does not hold the rank of Marquis. Valac is a president, which is one rank lower than Marquis on the demonic hierarchy. You were close, though. So I'm once again going to assume that most of the people who watch my content are familiar with the Conjuring movies. I say once again because I already made this assumption in my video on the demon Halphis or Malthus from the Annabelle installments of the franchise, which would be a great follow-up to check out after this one if you haven't seen it. Just saying. Anyways, that being the case, I'm sure the name Valac is hardly new to you, as the Conjuring franchise has taken this previously rather obscure demon to a more familiar status within pop culture. But where did the creators of The Conjuring get the name Valac? And who is the demon behind the fictionalized version we see in the movies? Let's get into it. So to understand who the demonic entity known as Valac is and where his origins lie, one must first understand what Goetic demons are. Now, most people familiar with the topic know that typically when someone is speaking about Goetic demons such as Valac, they are speaking of the 72 demons listed in the Ars Goetia, a list of demons said to have been sealed by King Solomon of ancient Israel, located in the 17th century grimoire known as the Lesser Key of Solomon. And that's not wrong, but there's a lot more to it than that. You see, the 72 demons in the Ars Goetia, Valac included, did not originate in the Lesser Key of Solomon. To pinpoint Valac's origins, we have to go back much farther than that. To start, where did the idea of Goetic demons even come from? Well, the answer to that would be a text known as the Testament of Solomon. I won't go into full detail here as I've already done so in my occult demonology guide, and I plan on making a video specifically on this topic, but to put it simply, the Testament of Solomon is a text said to have been written by King Solomon of ancient Israel, a prominent figure in the Old Testament and one that is quite revered in every Abrahamic religion. Although scholars and researchers are mostly of the opinion that this is false, and that it was more likely to have been created sometime between the end of the 1st century AD and the start of the 11th century. So sometime between the years 100 and 1000 AD. So it's still super old, but not as old as it claims to be. Anyways, this text tells the story of how King Solomon was able to command demons using the power of a magic ring given to him by God. And it basically provides a series of interviews conducted by Solomon with a variety of different demons. This is the oldest known text that deals in information regarding specific individual demons, and is essentially the grandfather of every occult grimoire that exists today. So jump ahead a few hundred years to the 15th century and multiple other manuscripts on the topic of demonology and magic were created, and they contained lists of demons said to have been sealed and commanded by King Solomon. In fact, many of these manuscripts claim to have also been written by King Solomon. Again, researchers are for the most part of the opinion that these claims are false, but the general occult belief is that most of the information we have regarding individual demons comes from King Solomon. Now, it should be noted that the demons listed in these early 15th century grimoires don't exactly match up with the demons in the Testament of Solomon, nor are they even consistent between each grimoire. In fact, for most of these demons, these 15th century grimoires are the first known mention of them, leaving us to wonder where the authors got them from. Some can be linked to pagan gods that were demonized by the Christians, but the origins of many Goetic demons are unknown. Were they in even older manuscripts that have been lost to time, or did the authors of these 15th century grimoires just make them up? We don't know for sure. But that aside, now that you understand the basics of where Goetic demons come from, let's talk more specifically about today's subject: Valac. So first of all, it should be noted that, like every demon, Valac has multiple different variations of his name. This is mostly due to the many different translations of it throughout the history of occult literature. That being said, the first time Valac appeared in a grimoire, his name was not even close to Valac. In fact, he had two names. The text in question is a 15th century grimoire known as Liber Officiorum Spirituum, or in English, because I probably butchered that, the Book of the Office of Spirits. This manuscript is believed to be based on another 15th century manuscript called Livre des Esprits, or simply the Book of Spirits. You're gonna have to forgive my translation on that one. I dropped out of French class in 9th grade. This text has information in it dating back to at least the 13th century. However, Valac is not mentioned in the Book of Spirits and its list of 46 demons. The Book of the Office of Spirits, however, has a list of 82 demons in which Valac and many others were added. But as I was saying, Valac in this text appears under two very different names, Coulor and Doulis. Now this is a bit of a mystery, because Coulor and Doulis are not just different names for the same list entry, they are actually presented as two separate demons. Coulor being number 21 or 22 on the list depending on the version, and Doulis being 25. So why am I saying that they're both Valac? Well, the thing is, the descriptions of these two demons are almost identical. In the Book of the Office of Spirits, Coulor is described as such. A great prince, he appeareth like a child, and hath with him wings like to a goshawk. And he rideth upon a dragon that hath two heads, and giveth true answers for hid treasures. The description for Doulis has some added information, but is more or less the same. A great prince, he appeareth like a child, and wings like an angel. He rideth upon a dragon having two heads, and giveth true answers of hid treasures, and keepeth all treasures where serpents or snakes be seen to appear. And he giveth and appointeth the place where treasure is to all spirits to keep. And he giveth a man all manner of household spirits, and without him none can do it. And he giveth to the master all manner of serpents, and he hath under him 20 legions. So like I said, a longer description, but still, they both are described as appearing as a child with wings who rides upon a two-headed dragon and provides the location of hidden treasures. Modern versions of this grimoire often state in the footnotes that Coulor and Doulis appear to be a duplicate entry. Keep in mind that many of these grimoires were compiled from sometimes unfinished or even unrelated manuscripts. And so it's certainly possible that this duplicate entry exists, because these demons were either taken from two different manuscripts that mention the same entity, or the draft of one name and description and the final version of it both ended up being transcribed into the final version of the text. However, at this point there is no way of confirming whether or not Coulor and Doulis are the same demon, or if they are actually two demons that just so happen to look exactly the same and specialize in the same area. Grimoires that came after this one, however, combined Coulor and Doulis into one demon, and for unknown reasons scrapped those names entirely and gave him a new name: Valac. So Valac's next appearance is in another 15th century grimoire known as the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic, or just the Munich Manual for short. In this manuscript, a demon with a description matching Coulor and Doulis is included in a much smaller list of only 11 demons. Valac is described as appearing in the form of a boy with wings like an angel, riding on a two-headed dragon, and giving true answers to the fullness of hidden treasures. It states that he delivers serpents into the hands of the exorcist, and that he has under him 26 legions. So it would appear, like I said, that the author of the Munich Manual had taken both Coulor and Doulis and just made them into a single entry under the name Valac. It's worth noting that while Coulor in the Book of the Office of Spirits has no mentioned legion count in one version and 13 in another, and Doulis is described as having 20 legions, Valac in the Munich Manual has 26 legions, so for no known reason his legion count has increased. For those of you who are new here, a legion is a group of lesser demons under the command of a greater demon, similar to the legions of the Roman Empire. However, Valac's legion count isn't the only thing the Munich Manual changed. If you recall, the Book of the Office of Spirits ranked both Kulor and Dulis as princes. However, in the Munich manual, Valac is actually given the rank of president, which is 2 ranks lower than prince in the demonic hierarchy. So he was effectively demoted by the author of the Munich manual for reasons unknown. Unfortunately for Valac, however, this new ranking would stick, and every future grimoire to include him is consistent in ranking him as a president of hell. So the 16th century comes along, and Dutch physician and occultist Johann Weyer creates his own grimoire inspired by those of the 15th century called Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, containing a list of 69 demons. He lists Valac, with no H this time, as the 50th demon, describing him in the same way previous grimoires have, but this time giving him 30 legions of lesser demons. Finally, the 17th century rolls around and the Lesser Key of Solomon is created, containing within it the now famous list of 72 demons sealed by King Solomon, based on Johann Weyer's Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, the Ars Goetia. In the Ars Goetia, depending on which version you're reading, Valac is listed as Valac, Valac with a K, Ualac, Valu, Valix, or Valac, and he is the 62nd demon. The final description of him, given in the Ars Goetia, is as follows. The 62nd spirit is Valac, or Valac, or Valu. He is a president, mighty and great, and appeareth like a child with angel's wings, riding on a 2-headed dragon. His office is to give true answers of hidden treasures, and to tell where serpents may be seen, the which he will bring unto the exerciser without any force or strength being by him employed. He governeth 38 legions of spirits, and his seal is thus. So yeah, it's the same description we see in every grimoire Valac appears in. If I recall, in the video I did on Halphus, I sort of attempted to explain the various aspects of his description. However, with Valac, it's sort of much more straightforward. His specialty is finding both hidden treasure and snakes. Obviously, hidden treasure could potentially mean a lot of things besides literal hidden treasure. It could be referring to anything of value that you are unable to find or have yet to obtain in your life. Snakes, on the other hand, are quite literally snakes in this context. Serpents. He's going to bring you snakes for some reason. Valak's sort of like the weird kid on the playground that shows you bugs he found. Look, I found all these snakes. Oh, cool, dude. Did you bring the treasure too, or just the snakes? Anyways, in the Ars Goetia description, Valac now has 38 legions, although in some versions it remains 30. So, for some reason, his legion count keeps increasing with every new grimoire. Now, just for fun, if you are curious as to how many demons 38 legions actually is, we can easily calculate it. It should be mentioned that, as it is with many things in demonology, this number is up for debate, and entirely depends on who you ask or which text you refer to. But for the sake of today's video, we'll use the number provided in Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. In this text, it states that the number of demons in a legion is equal to 6,666. That being said, if Valac has 38 legions, 38 times 6,666 is 253,308 demons. That's how many lesser demons are under the command of Valac. Anyways, the Ars Goetia also provides us with the seal of Valac on screen now. If you've seen other videos of mine, you know that a demon's seal is very important, and used within Solomonic magic as a means of controlling the demon. More specifically, the seal is meant to be worn on the body of the summoner and is typically made out of a specific type of metal, depending on the demon's rank. Because Valac is a president, his seal should be made of mercury. As a side note and comparison, because I didn't mention it in the Halphus video, since Halphus is an Earl, his seal would be made of copper and silver. Now that's all the information we have in most versions of the Ars Goetia. However, there is one version that gives us a bit more. There is a version of the Ars Goetia that was written by a 17th century English military engineer and mathematician named Thomas Rudd. In his version of the text, he actually provides us with the opposing angel for each Goetic demon. This is a concept that is well ingrained in demonology. The idea that each demon has an opposite and opposing angel. In Thomas Rudd's grimoire, they are known as the 72 adversarial angels, but also known as the 72 angels of the Shem Hamfarash. This isn't a concept exclusive to Thomas Rudd, by the way. It's just the most straightforward text on the subject that I've seen. Anyways, these angels are described as being the antidote that enables you to control each demon. The names of these angels are sometimes invoked during a Solomonic ritual to assist you in taming your target demon. I will go into the topic of adversarial angels in greater detail in another video because it's pretty interesting, but for the sake of this video, all you need to know is that in Thomas Rudd's manuscript, the process of conjuring a demon is to first invoke the name of the opposing angel, and then, using its authority, bind the demon. In Thomas Rudd's edition of the Ars Goetia, the seal for these angels is given next to the seal of their corresponding demon. The adversarial angel who opposes Valac, or Valu as it's written in Thomas Rudd's version, is an angel known as Iahhel. It's written as Iahhel in the seal on screen because language is weird and I'm not going to get into that, but just know that the main name for this angel is Iahhel. Now you'll notice that the angelic seal is much different than the demonic seal. Instead of a symbol inside, it has Latin. This Latin is actually known as the Psalm of Invocation. Each angelic seal has a different verse from a psalm in the Bible, with the exception of one angel that has a verse from Genesis instead. The verse for Iahhel is Psalm 119, verse 159, and it reads, "Consider how I love thy precepts. Quicken me, O Lord, according to thy loving kindness," or some variation of that depending on which version of the Bible you're reading. Now, I don't want Iahhel here to steal the spotlight from Valac in his own video, but because I don't want to do videos for all 72 angels, I'm going to include a short description of Iahhel here, and other angels will be briefly discussed in their corresponding demons video as well. Iahhel is known as an angel who influences the acquisition of wisdom and knowledge, as well as the love of tranquility, solitude, modesty, and virtues. He governs philosophers and enlightened individuals and signifies the desire to know. And I find this hilarious when compared to what Valac is known for. I have brought you all these virtues and wisdom, tranquility, solitude, and modesty. Oh, wow, thank you. Valac, what did you bring? Tweza and snakes. Anyways, I could probably go into greater detail on Iahhel, but we'd be getting too off topic, and this series is not called Angelic History. The point is that he rules over Valac, and Valac probably doesn't like him very much. Just as a side note, because we didn't talk about angels in the Halphis video, the angel that opposes Halphis is Hamia, who is an angel that influences the acquisition of all treasures of heaven and earth, and who stands against fraud, weapons, wild beasts, and infernal spirits. He governs all that relates to God. So as I stated earlier, some Goetic demons can be directly linked to pagan gods that were demonized during the dawn of Christianity. Valac is not one of those demons. There are no pagan traditions or pantheons containing a deity that has been linked to Valac. And unlike Halphis, who had some compelling cases to discuss, Valac doesn't really have any god that matches him all that well. Obviously, there are a lot of gods related to snakes, but I'm not just going to list them all here and say that they could be Valac because snakes. There is one god, however, from Slavic paganism that I've heard mentioned as a potential candidate for Valac. The god in question is known as Velez, a Slavic god of earth, water, livestock, forests, music, trickery, wealth, and the underworld. There isn't a crazy amount of connections between Valac and Velez, but there are a few things that might be worth mentioning. Firstly, the name. Velez is also known as Volos, which is sort of close to Volak. His counterpart in Baltic religion, Velnius, can be translated to demon or devil in Lithuanian, and his counterpart in Vedic or ancient Hinduism is known as Vala. which obviously Valac. However, let's not forget that his earliest names were Cooler and Dulis for whatever reason. Outside of the name, the animals associated with Velez are wolf, bear, owl, snake, and dragon. Emphasis on snake and dragon because, as per his description in Goetic grimoires, he has a strong connection to snakes, and also rides atop a two-headed dragon. The dragon part is slightly more significant than that though, because in Slavic paganism, Velez sometimes appears as a dragon, which was actually more of a chimera-like creature that was a cross between a bear and a snake. And if you know your mythological creatures, you'll know that chimeras are often depicted with more than one head. You know, like the two-headed dragon that Valac rides on. Admittedly, I think these connections are a bit of a stretch, but you never know. I will add that after Christianity came about, we know that Velez was split into several different characters. He became synonymous with the devil because of his connection to the underworld and dragons, but the more positive sides of him were converted into several different Christian saints. That being said, given that we are historically aware of what became of Velez in the wake of Christianity, it's hard to imagine that him being demonized into Valac would have slipped by undocumented. So, I would say Valac is probably not Velez, but it's definitely possible that he is. Anyways, I wish I had more to give you, but the sad truth of most Goetic demons is that a paragraph in a few Goetic grimoires is all we have. I can tell you that in Colin de Plancy's 19th century Infernal Dictionary, apart from the description I've already given, it also says that Valac knows the position of planets. But so does NASA, or any other space agency or astronomer, or even anyone who Googles it. But that's it. If you enjoyed this deep dive on Valac, be sure to leave me a like and a comment to help the algorithm. Also, we're going to do something different this time. Comment below which demon you are most interested in hearing about next, and the most liked comment will be the one that I cover the next time I do one of these videos. Duplicate comments don't count for more likes, just whatever single comment has the most likes. Thanks for watching, and good night.